Well, hey, welcome back to TrainWorldTV. Today we are talking about how to build your layout. Specifically, we're talking about track planning. So today we're going to look at a track planning software, just a little bit of in-depth look at how you can operate the software, and then how do you actually measure your room and some other things that you're going to want to think of to put those data points into the software so you can be successful in track planning. So with that said, let's get started right now on how to build your layout, track planning. Okay, so with the layout, you're going to want to make sure you measure room dimensions and measure them accurately. The best thing I can think of is maybe a laser measurer, which is a good idea. You can also just use an old school tape measure, but you want to measure accurately. And don't forget things like here, we have some studs that are sticking out. You don't want that to get in the way of your track planning. You don't want to print a track plan, develop it just to find out that a yard is going to run straight into this stud here. You don't want that to happen. You also want to look at things like water pipes here, like this is a drainage pipe. You're going to want to make sure you get the measurements for that so you don't run your yard or track into that area. There's other things that you want to consider as well. You're going to want to consider angles. And when you're measuring your track area where you're going to have your layout, you're going to want to make sure that you make enough table to take turns. For example, on this layout, we're looking at a 42-inch minimum radius on the main line. So in order for this track, which is actually curved to a 42-inch radius, to make that turn and negotiate that turn, there has to be a certain level of depth to this woodwork here, this bench work, and you're going to want to make sure that's far out enough to make that turn. As you see here, these are all track plans that are already printed for the layout. And I'll get into that later because you're going to want to do some things that will make sure you have a really good idea of where your track is going. As you can see here, the bench work was basically modified to address these turns. We have drop bridges, so you're going to want to make sure that the track is dead centered on the drop bridge. There's a lot of different measurements you want to make. And another tip is to make sure maybe you tape off where you think the layout is and make sure that all those dimensions work in your track planning software so that you can ensure that you're having those curves where you need them and there's not going to be modifications. So measuring is so important. And the old saying, measure once or measure twice, cut once, is more like measure 500 times. Because you're going to want to give yourself room for walkways, for example. Back here, I didn't want this up against the wall because maintenance personnel may have to replace this antiquated furnace one day. So there's just so many things to consider. It's one of those videos that's more of a tip video than a construction video. Alright, so this is called Any Rail 6, and as you can see, that is the back corner of my layout, close to where the bridge was that I just showed a little bit ago. And you can see how you can bring in track and drop it, rotate it where you need to go, and do several different things with this software. This is just one of many softwares. I'm not necessarily promoting this software, but you can change the radius and the curves, and then you turn it around and position it where you need to for the layout. So you can see there, it's probably a little close to the edge for rail. You're going to want to plan for at least 4 to 6 inches so that if one of your locomotives does tumble, it doesn't take a fall unless you plan on putting plexiglass all the way around above the layout surface. So we put a straight piece of track there, just kind of showing you how the track works, and there's just so many different track options in here. There's switches and anything you need to track plan. Now, some of the software like this is paid software, so you can purchase it. There's other software that's free as well, so there's a lot of options out there for track planning software. This is one of the better ones because you can measure everything and put the measurements for the table and then start laying track, which is mainly what I'm showing you on this video here, is just how you lay track and how you add it. You know, we just added a switch and now another straight. You can change the data for the switch, whether that's going to be a number 4 right hand, number 5, number 6, custom switches, or if you're doing the left hand, same situation there. And then when you connect the track, you just kind of put it directly straight on, and then it'll angle it out to where that straight will be going with the track. And then if you do bend it back in, you can make bends in the track. It will show you what that's going to look like on your layout. At a minimum, you're going to want to get a rough idea, but preferably a precise idea on how to lay your track and what you're going to do in order to lay that track on the track plan, because the preciseness is really needed if you decide to print a track plan, which we'll show you in a later series on how to transfer that track plan. So this is my whole room basically. You put your room dimensions in first, and then you're going to put your benchwork dimensions in, and then you'll need to adjust it. So I always suggest maybe it's a good idea to track plan before you actually do your benchwork, even though that is flip-flopped in this series here. Well, I hope you have a good idea of how to track plan now. And just to give you an overview again, you're going to want to measure your room. You're going to then want to measure where your layout's going, and then you can begin your track planning process using that software or any software you can get a hold of. There's also literature available for track planning from many different magazines, showing you how, or giving you even ideas of certain track plans if you have a simplified benchwork like a 4x8 or other size benchwork. There's lots of track plans out there. If you need ideas, you can just Google it, or again buy that literature. But measure your room, measure where your tables are going, get in the track planning software and build your layout. And then once that's done, you can print your layout. Make sure you use centerline, because cork road bed, which we'll get into later, basically folds in on the center line. So it really helps you when you're transferring your track plan, which I will show you at a later time in another video. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you have a good grasp on track planning now. Any questions, talk to each other in the comments section, and I will chime in too when I can to help you guys get your layout up and running. Until next time, we'll see you right back here on TrainWorld TV. Take care.